Today, we're diving into why your brain gets tired and how that simple, everyday fatigue can actually trigger some of your absolute worst decisions. So let's get right into it. I mean, you know the feeling, right? You've had a super long day, you've made a million tiny choices, and then your brain just stops. It stalls out. It happens to all of us. But here's the thing. It turns out this isn't just a feeling. It's actually a signal from your brain. Yeah, there is a real, actual biological process going on inside your head. And, while for most of us it just means another night of mindlessly scrolling through streaming services, in some high-stakes jobs, this brain drain can cost millions. Literally millions. Okay, so what is actually going on in our heads when we feel this way? Let's get into the biology of burnout. Okay, so think about a really hard workout, right? Your muscles get sore because of lactate buildup. Well, it turns out something very similar happens in your brain. When you do a lot of intense mental work, you get a buildup of this neurotransmitter called glutamate. And it happens right in your prefrontal cortex. That's the CEO of your brain, the part that handles all the big decisions. Now, too much glutamate is actually kind of toxic for your brain cells. So your brain has this built-in safety switch. It just starts to slow things down. It makes those hard choices feel, well, almost impossible. So how does it clean house? Simple. Sleep. When you're asleep, your brain's cleaning crew, the glymphatic system, literally flushes out all this chemical junk. It's why a good night's sleep isn't just nice to have. It's absolutely non-negotiable for your brain to recover. All right, so let's take this out of the lab and into a real-world pressure cooker. We're going to look at the world of financial trading, where your mental limits aren't just tested, they are under constant, relentless attack. This whole thing really comes down to a concept called cognitive load. Basically, it's the total amount of mental horsepower you're using at any one time. The computer processor analogy is perfect here. The more programs you have running, or for a trader, the more charts, news, and strategies they're juggling, the slower that mental processor gets. And that really increases the risk of a total system crash. And get this is wild. Research suggests the average person makes around 35,000 decisions a day. Now, most of them are tiny, right? What to wear, what to eat, but every single one chips away at your mental energy. Now, just imagine if hundreds of those decisions involved massive sums of money. So there's this famous study of parole judges that found something absolutely shocking. At the start of the day, their parole approval rate was about 65%. But as the day went on, as their brains got more and more tired, that rate plummeted to nearly zero. When they got fatigued, their brains just defaulted to the safest, easiest answer, no. This just goes to show you mental exhaustion doesn't just slow you down, it fundamentally changes the quality of your decisions. Okay, so we know fatigue is bad, but how exactly does it hijack our decisions and cause these huge errors? See, it's not just about feeling sleepy. It's about these specific chemical traps in your brain that get triggered when you're running on fumes. So let's talk about dopamine. Everybody calls it the feel-good or reward chemical, but that's not quite right. It's really more about the anticipation of the reward. It's the chase chemical. For a trader, their brain gets a little shot of dopamine just from the act of placing a trade or even checking a stock price, way before they know if it's a winner. The brain gets hooked on the action, on the chase, not necessarily the profit. And this is where a really dangerous feedback loop kicks in. You take an action, you get that little chemical rush, and your brain immediately goes, ooh, do that again. This is the very thing that leads to overtrading. And for the rest of us, it's why we compulsively check our phones 100 times a day. Your brain starts treating the whole thing like a slot machine, just pulling the lever over and over for the tiny hit of stimulation. I absolutely love this analogy of an emotional thermometer. When your mind is rested, you can keep that needle in the perfect warm zone. Focused, calm, rational. But when fatigue hits, that needle just swings wildly. You either run hot, driven by fear, greed, panic, or you go cold and get complacent and sloppy. And let me tell you, neither one of those is good for your decisions or your wallet. All right, so that's the problem. It's biological, it's powerful, and it's kind of scary. But here's the good news. It is absolutely manageable. So let's open up the playbook that the pros use to protect their single most valuable asset, their mind. And here's the absolute key takeaway. Professionals don't try to just power through fatigue. That's a losing game. Instead, they build systems to avoid it in the first place. Think about it. Pilots use checklists so they don't have to think under pressure. Well, top traders do the same thing with standard operating procedures to automate their decisions. They take regular, scheduled breaks. They make their biggest decisions at the start of the day. See, it's not about having more willpower. It's about being smarter with the willpower you have. And hey, here's a tool you can use literally right now. It's called box breathing, and it's a favorite of the Navy SEALs for staying calm under insane pressure. It's so simple. You just inhale for a count of 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold again for 4. That one simple cycle can immediately lower your stress and reset your focus. It's basically an instant mental reboot. So, what does this all mean for the rest of us? Whether you're trading stocks or just trying to survive a crazy week at work or with the kids. Well, the lessons from these elite performers apply to absolutely everyone. Because at the end of the day, all the fancy techniques in the world are useless without a solid foundation. And that foundation is stuff we all know, but maybe don't prioritize. Consistent sleep, decent nutrition and hydration, some daily movement, and maybe the most important one, just knowing when to step away and take a break. These aren't luxuries. They're not nice-to-haves. They are the absolute, non-negotiable fundamentals of performing well at anything. This quote really just wraps it all up perfectly. The greatest enemy of a trader is not volatility or uncertainty. It is a tired mind making important decisions. Let that sink in for a second. The biggest risks we face, they're often not out there in the world. They're right here, inside our own heads, when we push our minds past their breaking point. So I'll leave you with this question. Think of your mental clarity not as an infinite resource, but as a battery. And every single decision you make, big or small, drains it just a little bit. The real question is, how are you protecting yours? What are you doing every day to recharge it?